when you talk about blending something which comes with heavy science, so which means the scientific knowledge is a must, and business acumen, right? It's a combination which you have to drive. So one is it first begins with understanding the role, and by understanding, again, it's not just restricted to what you just see on the paper, but having a deeper understanding on what are those scientific aspects or business competencies which you're trying to hire for. And that will only be possible when a recruiter or anybody in the recruiting organization is able to bring in the right business acumen.
Welcome to the All-in Recruitment podcast by Manatal, where we explore best practices, learnings, and trends with leaders in the recruitment space. If you like our content, please subscribe to our channels on YouTube and Spotify to stay tuned for our weekly episodes. I'm your host, Lydia, and this week we have Indu Khanna of Dr. Reddy's Laboratories. Welcome to the show, Indu.
Thank you so much, Lydia. It's an absolute pleasure to be here.
So tell us about your journey in the talent acquisition space. I mean, it's multifaceted from what I can see. And you also have an interesting engineering academic background, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think your question is quite pertinent to my transition from an engineering to talent acquisition, a journey which I've been on for the past 20 years now, 2 decades. One thing which I want to call out is this is a journey of continued learning and growth, which has been both personally and professionally. So, if I have to say in a nutshell, when I was doing my engineering way back, there wasn't even a thought that I might end up into talent acquisition. Looks like everything was planned and carved out. When I started my first role into academics, and then also as a sales and service engineer. But then there was always this constant question on my mind, that is this something which I will continue to do for the rest of my life? And that's when I started pondering that what is it that I will really enjoy doing? And I happened to come across somebody who was running his own recruitment search firm. So that's when I started understanding what is all that he's doing for a living, and he was really doing quite well, which excited me. And that's when the talent acquisition bug, you can say, hit me. And it is all what happened, and it took shape when I had opportunities to work with organizations which were into different segments, into financial, healthcare, multiple facets, and then focusing purely on talent. And little did I realize that the past 2 decades have been a journey where I have focused so much on bringing in the right talent for the organizations where I have worked, that it's almost this is something which even I dream about when I am back out of office. So yeah, it's been a beautiful journey so far, and I'm sure it's going to continue.
Indeed, and it's definitely in the people space. It's never cut and dry. It's never set. There's no single direction to take, and so you're absolutely right when it comes to saying it's a continuous learning journey. And in your role at Dr. Reddy's Laboratories, I mean, you're the director of talent acquisition. So, what are some key areas that you prioritize in an organization this big?
Yeah. So that's quite interesting, because the past roles also, and plus my role at Dr. Reddy's, which I have, organizations across are going through a lot of transformations, right? And specifically when it comes to talent, because talent is the key. Without the right talent, the organizations cannot move ahead. So this also shows how talent acquisition teams have become very close to how talent strategies are driven in the organization. So, likewise, in my role here, the biggest priority was to ensure that we are carrying out this talent transformation journey with bringing in the right tools, the right processes, the right organization design. It even involved in designing the organization in the right manner so that you build a scalable talent organization, an organization which can support the multiple growth avenues which the current organization is going through, and also at the same time is is an organization which is able to maneuver its way through different talent challenges which we face. Because you are living in a highly competitive talent world, or a space where talent is constantly in demand, and to get the best talent is very critical. So the key broad areas which I am also focusing in my role is, with bringing in a lot of tools and technology, how do my entire team and I ensure that candidate experience and the hiring manager experience is at the center of all that we do. You do not want to disturb those experiences, because they are an integral part of a recruiter's journey in talent acquisition. So this has been a priority, as well as how do you work closely with your stakeholders so that you are able to identify the right talent. And by right talent, I'm not just talking about the one which is matching your job description, but the one which is going beyond the job description. Because many a times the job descriptions are very well written, but then there is something which is playing on the mind of the hiring manager, which only he can tell you in his multiple words. And when you're working closely with him, you get to know when you're interacting with him and sitting in interviews through him. So I think that's very important, that how my team is bringing the right talent at the right time. So how effectively are we using the sourcing capabilities in the organization? So these are some of the top focus areas for me in my role here.
So in terms of, bringing in technology and turning that into a process, or rather different processes across the organization, what might be some early challenges, or maybe some obstacles that you would have faced that you had had to overcome within the organization that you could probably share?
Yeah, so when you talk about technology, while recruitment technology also, it all begins with identifying the right tools and technology. And that, I must say, is when you need the right tech partners to support you, to identify. Because once you are able to identify the right tool, it moves to the next stage of adopting, or rather before adopting, it comes to an implementation stage, where you need to be very clear on how and when are you going to implement the tool. And along with implementation comes the whole adoption piece, because a tool is a great tool when it is operating in isolation, but the merit comes into play when all the parties who are involved in the recruitment activity, in the hiring activity, are equally adopting the tool, whether it starts from the talent acquisition teams itself to the managers and to the partners who are part of the entire recruiting process. So I would say identification, implementation, and then the right adoption of the tools and technology will either make or break this whole process of revamping the organization.
Now, when it comes to recruiting for roles that, obviously require in this particular industry, require a blend of scientific knowledge and even business acumen. And so how do you approach recruiting for such roles?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, Lydia, because when you talk about blending something which comes with heavy science, so which means the scientific knowledge is a must, and business acumen, right? It's a combination which you have to drive. So one is, it first begins with understanding the role. And by understanding, again, it's not just restricted to what you just see on the paper, but having a deeper understanding on what are those scientific aspects or business competencies which you're trying to hire for. And that will only be possible when a recruiter or anybody in the recruiting organization is able to bring in the right business acumen, which means understanding your business in and out so well that you really are acting as an advisor to your stakeholder. Because this would also mean that you have a fair understanding of the market, you have a fair understanding of your competitors who are hiring in the same space. Because today, if you look at it, social media access is so open to everyone. Even the hiring manager can might as well go and sit on any social media platform which is available and can call out that I want to hire, right? So how is the talent acquisition professional helping this hiring manager to do the hiring bit, so that the hiring manager is able to focus on the core job? And that's the speciality which uh, an advisor or a talent advisor who's actually functionally aligned to the right business. So understanding the business becomes the key. And then the second aspect is a lot around leveraging the industry network, because with so much of access available and tools available in the market, it's very important that a recruiter goes back and understands what is the right network to get into, and to be able to identify the expertise which are existing in that network and bring the right talent. It could even be going to the right academic institution, because not necessary that you're always going to hire a very experienced hire. You might even bring in somebody who is fresh out of his campus and is wanting to come and make a career with your organization. So how do you tap into these networks at the right time? That understanding and a blend with understanding the role will definitely pave way for success.
Now, Indu, you've used the term recruiting organization several times now. I'm curious to see how you define that. I mean, what does that look like in your view?
Okay, so recruiting organizations, according to me, is the complete talent acquisition organization. And so today, if you look at several organizations which have different structures, there are structures where either the recruiting or the talent acquisition organizations are either part of a broader organization, or they sit separately somewhere, or they sit with businesses. So the prime objective of a recruiting organization is not just managing or working on the routine hiring or the roles which you want to fill in, but according to me, a recruiting organization is also the one who's talking about building a proactive approach to recruiting. So an organization which is ready at any given point in time to ensure that the business support is continued, because the kind of times where we are, the VUCA times which we are living in, right, of constant change, uh, constant ambiguities which are even our business leaders face. It's very important that if this recruiting organization is having that strong hold on the entire understanding of where my organization stands and where is it that the right talent is available, the recruiting organizations can do wonders. That's what I believe in.
Now, in terms of technology, I mean, this being one of the core pillars that you're focusing on, how do you view that balance between the use of technology and also that human element, the very crucial human element in talent acquisition?
Yeah, absolutely. Because you, like I was saying some time back, it's very important to keep your candidate and your hiring manager experience at the center of all that you do. Because with technology, many a times it could become a monotonous approach. It's that, you have so many chatbots today in the market, you have so many systems which are AI driven, and the systems have become so intelligent that many a times you might feel that, oh, do I really need a person? Or yes, I need a person, right? So how do you blend in the right balance between technology and bring in that human element? Because according to me, talent acquisition is driven a lot around empathy towards the entire value chain or the people who are involved in the entire recruiting process. So how I would like to put this up is, you look at your task. The talent acquisition organization has multiple tasks. Now, there are some routine tasks which you can definitely take help from technology. You can put in the tools which will allow you to automate certain routine tasks. So, whether it is a simple thing about doing your first level of resume screening. So, how do you bring in say an ATS, which is an applicant tracking system, which is AI driven and helps you do the first level of resume screening. Because then over there, you are using technology, you're saving time, you're trying to be a productive organization, and you know that that element doesn't require a human intervention. Secondly, when it comes to interview scheduling, you have tools today who are smart enough to go and enter into your hiring manager's calendars and identify available slots or the best time when the managers are available to interviews, so that you pick those slots up and give conveniences to your candidates. So you're trying to balance both technology as well as the human intervention. And then you also talk about certain things where it will be very important to have the human element. So when it comes to talking to candidates, how is it that you are giving them the right messaging? You are also looking at data internally as well as externally, because your candidate at any given point in time would not be happy to not be in loop. So that's how you have to decide that where do I bring in my technology into play to automate certain tasks, and then there are certain tasks which definitely need a human touch. So according to me, empathy and understanding will go hand in hand when we are talking about building those greater candidate experiences which do have human elements still in the process.
It's also interesting how you're looking at not just the candidate experience, but also inward and into the hiring manager experience, right?
Mhm.
You were talking about both sides of that being central to a recruiter's
Yeah.
practice. So, in terms of the hiring manager's experience, how do you approach that, and what is the kind of outcome that you'd like to see from
Mhm.
prioritizing something like that?
Yeah. So, from a hiring manager standpoint, if you look at a hiring manager would definitely come up with high expectations first. So, understanding again, the empathy and the understanding element is equally very important. Maybe I'll take you sometime back to an example where I
Mm,
faced in my earlier role, where we had a very tough stakeholder, and the kind of hiring which we were doing for him was very technical. It involved to hire somebody who would actually be part of a process which is being conducted in a hospital in an operation theater, right? So and that required to bring in a talent which would obviously have a lot of focus, a lot of presence of mind,
mm,
and a lot of alertness to be ready to handle if something goes wrong, because you're dealing with patients live in the operation theater, right? So if why I'm citing that example is because if you just look at the JD and you say that okay, you need an individual who can do these five different things and brings in this level of skill, but when you are actually visiting that operation theater and you're seeing
mm,
how today the hiring manager and his team are supporting during the case which is happening in the operation theater, you will be able to connect more and have a better understanding to know that why is he insisting to bring a high caliber talent.
mm,
So that's the difference. How do you bring in that experience and that empathy with your hiring manager, that what he's asking is not because he wants to he wants the talent acquisition teams to go through multiple profiles and then choose the best, but there's a reason behind it.
mm.
So if the purpose, so it all connects back to the purpose. If the recruiter has the right understanding of the purpose of the organization and the purpose of his or her role, I am sure the empathy element for the hiring manager will equally be built in into the process itself. So again, that's why I say having the right understanding and empathy for both, for your candidates and hiring manager, is equally critical for the process.
Now, going back to the candidates into, I mean, we've seen so many changes in the past, 2 years itself, or just 3 years. Let's not go too far. So,
Yeah.
do you have any observations about, how candidate expectations of a recruiter or a talent acquisition professional, how have they changed or how have they evolved? Is there a difference that you've seen in recent years?
Yeah. So yes, to answer your second part, where I have seen any differences from what it was earlier to what it is now in the
Mm,
recent past, with so much of access there for a candidate. A candidate has today access to tools which can even tell him that how is his profile progressing in the organization, right? So with that access available, a candidate, the expectations of the candidates have gone up, right? They would want the process to be very transparent. So transparency is key over here. At
mm,
any given point in time, when we know that this is the right talent for me, and as an organization, maybe I might not be able to hire him at this point in time, but I definitely need him, say, 6 months to 10 months down the line. So, how is a recruiter being transparent to the candidate? That will play a very critical role. The next is on time response. So, if the candidate is not being engaged enough, by the recruiter or the talent acquisition professional, the candidate will lose interest. So, which again means that the constant engagement with the candidate is a must, and the personalized interaction. Because when you talk about a customer service oriented organization, also, you don't want to lose your top customers. You don't want to lose connects with your customers who are going to give you a lot of returns. So it's the same space. When you're talking about your high potential candidates or the ones who are present in the talent pool and are equally interested in making a career with your organization, you cannot afford to lose them. So I think if I look at it the other way around, so the candidate expects a treatment like a customer. He needs to be well in the process and also know that, yes, he might be out of the process. So a recruiter has to be very honest with the candidate to ensure that the candidate is getting the right experience and is still interested in the entire process of recruiting.
Yeah. Now we come back to the recruiter and the recruiting team, right? Or rather the recruiting organization, as you call it. The talent team today or recruiting team today is multifaceted. You've got to wear so many hats, and you have to learn very quickly about fast evolving roles. Even the industry, you know this very well. So what are some steps to take for talent teams to become data driven or sharpen their approach towards the use of data now with technology coming in?
So data plays the big role. You can say today with the kind of work which is happening on data analytics and how this high-end data can really help us make or break a recruiting process. So if you look at how I drive it and what I usually recommend to my teams is it's all about defining the ask, defining the objectives, and putting in the right KPIs, the key performance indicators for the teams. So just some time back when we were doing the goal setting exercises, it's very simple to put a goal in your goal sheet, right? We all know the goals need to be smart. But if your goal is also not driving certain data outcomes and is not bringing in certain behavioral changes which you need in the process or in individuals when they are dealing with the candidates, then I don't think it's the right approach. So for me, it begins with defining the objectives. So it starts with setting clear goals. Identifying what are those objectives which we want to achieve through data driven strategies and what are the broad outcomes which we are expecting. So if my a KPI is about reducing my time to hire, how much of input have I looked at before I even reach to a conclusion to say that I'm going to take a goal of reducing my time to hire by, say, 20 days? But for that, has the background work on data analysis being done, which calls out that for which category of role is it doable and for which category of role is it not doable? So it needs to be a realistic SMART goal. Then talking about improving the quality of hire. So connecting every data to the business objectives or the team objectives will help bring in this cadence and bringing thinking into the team. So defining the goals and setting the right objectives will help drive a team which is more data driven, and at the same time investing in the right tools. Like today there are many applicant tracking systems which actually can pull out a lot of data. Data tells the story, and it's important to drive inferences from this data. So you need to constantly educate your teams on the importance of data and bring in the right tools and equip the team so that they are able to play with data and bring up those beautiful stories which are lying somewhere hidden in those lines of data which we are getting exposed to every day.
And speaking of beautiful stories that you've seen as a recruiter, or you've seen in the talent acquisition space, there's thousands, there's so many stories I'm sure you can tell, and even those from your team. But as a final question, what is your most memorable recruitment moment or recruitment story? I know you shared another one earlier about going into the just basically going on site to find out what it's like day to day for this particular role. But is there anything else that's made a specific impact on your career?
Yeah, absolutely. So, there's something which I can think of while I'm talking to you.
Mm.
So, I worked with the healthcare industry now for quite some time, and you know that talent is mobile, right? So, I happened to hire one individual in two different organizations, and it was my signature on the offer letter which this individual received. So obviously, because of the long chain of processes, maybe I did not get an opportunity to interact with this individual, but through my team the hiring was done and I was responsible for putting in the signature in his offer letter. So when he came into the second organization where he saw that I was the TA lead and I had signed on his letter, he made it a point that he should come and talk to me so that he understands that who's this individual who's changed my career twice. So that was so heart touching, and
Mm.
I really felt that, oh my god, you're really trying to make a difference into somebody's life, and there is an acknowledgement. The individual came to me, acknowledged that he was very thankful that at least directly indirectly I was somewhere touching his career.
Mm.
And stories around this where people come and share that either my team or I have somewhere played a small part
Mm.
in building their careers is are those stories which remain close to heart. Yeah.
That's a lovely anecdote, especially when it comes from a signature, a very
Yeah.
cold letter, right? Turning
Yeah.
into a warm interaction. I mean, that's just lovely to hear. So thank you for sharing that, and also for your insights today, Indu. I think there's been generous, very generous of you to share this, and also it's going to be very valuable to the listeners as well. So for those who are listening in who want to pick up a conversation with you, or who's probably seen your signature somewhere on an offer letter in the past, and they want to contact you, where can they get in touch with you? What's the best channel?
Oh yeah, absolutely. They can reach out to me through LinkedIn. That's absolutely a professional networking site. I'm happy to be available for them if they have questions. I do have people who reach out, so happy to support.
Thank you again, Indu. And we have been in conversation with Indu Khanna of Dr. Reddy's Laboratories. Thank you for joining us this week. And remember to subscribe to stay tuned for more weekly episodes from All in Recruitment.